This week, you're going to focus on creating a homepage for your entire EdTech website. And you're going to actually save this at the root level as default.html. So we describe this as the default project or creating your default page. So this project does not require you to develop a learning activity. Instead, you will use a CSS template to create an attractive homepage for your EdTech website. This is not a teacher homepage for your classroom. Instead, it's a splash page that introduces your EdTech website. It provides a statement of purpose and links to projects you are creating throughout the program. So what exactly is a default page? Well, a default page or a homepage for a website typically is either named as default.html or HTML or index.html or HTML. And what that does is the server, depending on how it's set up, will recognize that, and it doesn't actually require a user to type that into a web browser. So this URL is actually pointing to a file called HTML. So they're actually the exact same. And it's because this page we're looking at is named default.html. You'll notice that if I do HTML, that doesn't work. Or in this case, if I did index.html, it doesn't work. So what's nice is it allows a user a shortcut to just go to your website and see the splash page. So you could think of if you're going to cnn.com, rather than having to type in cnn.com/default.html, it just goes right to the home page automatically. So here's another example. If you go to the EdTech2 website, you'll see that there's actually a file called that says for students, and that file is called default.html. And so in this case, there is no L. So if I type L there, it won't work. So that's how this page was set up. And the server is set up to actually recognize any of these variations. So the same way, if we go to mine, you'll notice that there's actually no file there. And so in this case, I would have to actually create my file. And so in this example, I'm going to actually just create one. So I'm going to save this as index.html, and then I'm going to upload it and we'll check it out. So now that I have my index.html, if I refresh, there it goes. So that's actually the same as index.html. So that's the basic idea of a default page or an index page, is it's just a way to make it easier for users to come to your website. And usually that splash page is going to give an overview of whatever the website is. It helps the user know what the files, what they can expect on that site. And so this is the example here. And so the second part of this, while we want you to understand what a default or index page is, we also want you to get experience using templates. Templates can speed up a lot of your web development. With that said, some templates are easier to use than others. You can also just Google free CSS templates and you'll find all kinds. Now with these, and this is something to be aware of, is a lot of them seem to be traditionally set up for blogging sites. So they're going to have all types of code that you'll have to decipher and work your way through. So, carefully pick a template that makes sense to you and that's useful. You might find that the first one or two you download aren't ones you want to actually use. You can also use one of the templates that are in Dreamweaver. And so in this example, this was created using one of the templates in Dreamweaver. So in Dreamweaver, when you go to File New, you'll notice that there's all these templates. And if you start working your way down, this is one column fixed center. And fixed means it has a fixed layout, where these liquid mean they're going to adjust based on the screen. And you'll see two column, left bar, etc. And so this example here that we are showing you was actually created with the two column liquid left sidebar header and footer. You'll also notice that there are a couple of HTML5 ones. These templates you're going to find are commented out in the CSS code, and they're probably going to be a lot easier to use than some of the templates you find online at the websites. But the ones online are going to have a bit more flair and style to them. Well, spend some time experimenting with both. And so the other thing to notice is that you're going to find a lot of the templates are created with XHTML. So there's not as many HTML5 ones out there. So one HTML5 site that I did find is this one, and it looks like there are a number of different ones here. And what's nice about these is they are responsive design, so you can see what it would look like on a tablet. You can see what it would look like on a smartphone. And so this website looks like it has some promising templates as well. But I'm going to spend a minute and show you how to create a default page like the example, but rather than use XHTML like in that example, I'm going to do it using one of the HTML5 ones down below. And so the first thing I'm going to do is go to File, New, and I'm going to choose the HTML5 two-column fix. Notice how the sidebar's on the right. We're going to change that and move it to the left. For some reason, they don't give you as many options here. And so I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to hit Create. And you notice that the first thing it does is it prompts me to save the CSS file. And one of the things that's hard with working with templates is understanding the naming conventions that whoever created the template used. So this obviously makes sense to the people who created Dreamweaver, but this is just kind of a mouthful. So I'm going to call this default, and I'm going to save it in my styles folder. So you'll notice that when it comes up that it gives the basic color scheme. So looking at the example here, you'll see that there's a basic header with the name, a sidebar on the left, and then content on the right. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this insert logo and delete that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and you'll notice if you take the time to read, it explains all this stuff for you. I'm going to click on this. I can see that's an aside, but I don't need it, and delete that. And so here what I have is I have my sidebar 1, and then within it I have these basically, it's a, look over here, you can see it's an unordered list that has some style to it. But I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go over here to the pencil, and you'll notice how it's float right. I'm just going to go float left and hit apply. And just like that, I've changed it to the layout that I want. So I'm going to save this, but instead of saving it in my 502 folder, I'm going to actually save it at the root level of my EdTech2 site. First thing I'm going to do now is title it, because that's something very easy to forget. And now I'm going to go to the body tag. I'm going to see the background color over here, and I'm going to hit the pencil, and I'm going to go to background, and I know the background I want to use, and I'm going to hit apply. And I'm going to go up to header, I'm going to hit the pencil, background color, hit apply, and you can see that the way this is set up, I'm going to hit cancel actually, because what you can see is this is applying it to all of these things, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go over here and just delete that, and instead I'm going to go to split view, click on this, and notice all the comments, and these are wonderful. And so spend some time looking through this, and this will help make sense. You won't find, or in my experience you won't find, is helpful comments in a lot of the ones that you're going to download. So here's the header tag. This was what I missed before, and that's why it's very helpful working in split view. So then my default container, I'm going to change that from white. I'm going to now go back to this, and I'm going to change this rather from 960 and do 794. You type your name up top, do H1. I could take a look at that, and you can see that it's giving all these properties. So rather than mess with that, and right now I'm just typing this in anywhere. You want to keep your code organized. And so by the end, you're going to want to go through and probably clean up the code. So you'll notice as you just make changes throughout, like when I changed the container with this change. So it's just a matter of playing with that and adjusting it as you see fit, as needed as you go about. So now I'm going to work on my navigation, my links. And right here I'm just deleting these because these are things I don't need. And you just have to spend some time looking at the code. Sorry, let's go to source code to find out what all is happening. So in this case, I just want to get rid of this, put a letter in there so I can see it's a placeholder. And I'm just going to copy in my text. So you'll actually need to go through, type in the links that you want to link to. You'll see some specifics, and Moodle, be sure to look at the rubric as well to find out what's expected. I'm going to click on the sidebar, and the width looks good, the padding looks good. I'm going to actually add font size, see what that looks like. And what I could do is if I could just delete the space, bring these closer. So in the example, you'll notice that there's this bar that goes across, so that's something that you can create a class for. And so I can always click over here, and I want to create a class. Menu bar, I'll call it. Have to make sure you put it in the style sheet. And you notice that it's saying it's a standard HTML tag. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to call it nav heading. and click OK. So with HTML5, there's a number of new tags that I know myself I'm not aware of. So it's something that it's just important to try not to name classes things that are going to conflict. And so I'm going to hit apply, hit OK. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to highlight my links there, and I'm going to go down to class. I'm going to choose menu bar and do the same thing here with my external links. Let's try that again. So you notice that the contrast is pretty poor, so I'd have to do a few more things with that. So I'm just going to jump down to my CSS, and I'm going to type in a few things here. So specifically, let's drag this so you can see it better. I wanted to add a font weight, I want to make it bold, uppercase, and I wanted to use this color. So there you go. So in the example, I actually don't have a different background color, so I'm going to just delete that. Let's try that once more. And if you can always even just apply the same one and boom. Alright, so I'm going to go over here. You'll notice that these are sections, and you could have, there's lots of different ones for different bits of content. I'm going to actually just use one. That looks good. Here, I'm going to get rid of this text. I'm going to insert an image. In this case, I know the image I want, and I already have it saved in my images folder. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to delete this text, a lot of it at least. So here for my H2, because you notice I used H1 up here, so I'm going to just hit plus. I'm going to go less specific, make sure it's in my default. That's the color I want to use. I'm going to use the font. Focus on having my margin at the bottom be 0. Alright, so that's looking good. So you notice there's all this stuff done here. So in this case, I'm not going to need all this. I'm going to click on section because I want to actually add font size. Let's see what 16 pixels looks like. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to have an extra heading. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to choose heading 3. And I'm going to create a style for that. Be less specific. Make sure it's in default. I'm going to go with a Bronco orange color. Let's see what that looks like. And I'm going to notice how default it always gives that spacing after, but if you think of Robin Williams, she talks about proximity, so I'm going to actually make sure I have a 0 for my bottom margin. If you want some space, you can sometimes just add a couple pixels and it will accomplish what you want. A couple last things I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on my container adding a border. And I know what I want here, so I want it to be 1 pixel solid in that color. So moving on down, I'm going to focus on my footer. I can see this is properties for all these. I don't want that. I'm just going to plus sign. Hit apply. Let's save this and preview it. So this is what I've done so far. This is the example. You notice there's some differences, little things, mainly with font size that that I could tinker with. Some spacing for sure that could be improved upon. Need to make sure that that's definitely white font at the bottom. So let's jump back. We'll make a few final tweaks. We're not trying to make this exact right now. So for H1, we will do padding. We're going to do the top, do 10 pixels, the right 0, the bottom 10 pixels, and the left 0. And so looking on that, I definitely want to add some more to the left because I want that strong alignment. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to click in my footer. I'm going to add a font color of white. And if I wanted to, I could make the font size smaller. And so this is where you'd want to put your copyright information. And then below this is where you would put your validation. Okay, let's preview this in Safari this time. It's always good to try different browsers. Okay, so this is what it looks like, and this is HTML5, and this is what the original one using XHTML. So font size, a few things are a little different for sure that you could go ahead and tweak, but hopefully you get the basic idea of how you could use the HTML5 template in Dreamweaver to create your default page. Be sure to look at the rubric in your class to make sure you meet all the requirements. The final steps here would be to complete all the text, to spell check it, to validate the code, and then to upload the final default page into your EdTech 2 server space, but not in the 502 folder, and to test it. Thanks.